Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Kick Off Your Damn Heels. I am Dr. Teralyn, and I am here tonight with my colleague, Veronica Worley. And Veronica is a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. She's going to tell us what that is exactly. But we are going to talk today about one of my favorite topics of all times, and that is the brain, and it is nutrition on the brain and why that is important and what things to look for in good nutritional value for brain health. So welcome, Veronica. Woohoo. Yeah, I should have a little clappy machine like, yay, here she is. All right, why don't you tell us what a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner is first?
Okay, I'll do my best. Okay,
All right.
So we call it FDNP for short just because it's a mouthful to say functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, we help people heal their bodies using not only food. We have what's called a DRESS protocol, the DRESS for Health Success, which is diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, and supplementation. So we work with clients on that, but we also are able to help clients run lab tests out of their own home so that they can use that as interpretate that and help them come up with a protocol for healing.
Oh, nice. So is there something specifically that you focus on, or is it just anything?
It's anything. Yes, we get the clients, as you know, in functional medicine, we get those clients who go to the doctors that say there's nothing wrong with them, but they know there is something wrong because they don't feel good. So we help them look at the entire person, and all the systems of the body and figure out and get to the root of what the cause is.
All right. So brain health is near and dear to my heart because I work with mental health and addiction all the time. And we don't do enough talk about nutrition and brain health. And I was just talking to my daughter today and I said, people don't expect to come to a therapist and talk about food, and she goes, people don't expect to go to a doctor and talk about food. Like we want to go someplace and talk about a medication or something to help. So I want to get right to it and talk about some of the best foods for nutrient value to help with brain health. So what do you got, Veronica?
Okay, well, first of all, if you want to increase your brain health, you need to know if you're having a brain dysfunction, right? Mm-hmm. And so you want to look at the 5 warning signs that you have that might show that you're having some brain deterioration. And basically we're looking at, do you have low energy most of the time? And people complain of energy a lot, don't they?
All the time, like fatigue and energy. Yeah.
Oh, it's huge. I get a lot of people like that. But if you have low energy most of the time, that's warning sign number 1. And I could go into more detail on that if you want, but I know we need to get to the foods. We're looking at if a person is impulsive and do things they shouldn't, even though they know they shouldn't do them, or maybe they don't want to do them. There's a sign that there's a brain, the cells aren't quite connecting there. And a lot of times people have ADD or a concussion, have this more as far as brain deterioration than others. Warning sign number 3, your memory is worse than it was 10 years ago. Hello, isn't that most of us?
It is.
Talk about brain fog and we just can't remember things like we used to. Warning sign number 4 is you're frequently stressed, worried, and anxious. I mean, isn't that the majority of the population?
Yes.
But if a person, we normally have overly anxious thoughts, right? But when a person has them more frequently and to where they're stressing the person out, then you're looking at there's some issues going on there. And we're also looking at if the there's mood changes, or the mood of a person tends to be low the majority of the time, and it's getting lower and lower. Depression, suicidal thoughts, mood imbalances, highs one day, lows the next. And then, of course, you have the whole list, as you know, of issues, bipolar, things that can come under that. And so if a person is having these warning signs, then you need to know that you can use food. Food is one way to help the healing process. Okay. So,
I mean, for anyone that's listening, this is really good news because we eat food all the time, right? So why don't we just look at improving some of those food choices to help improve our brain health and emotions and that type of thing. So, all right. So you've got a list of foods for us.
I do. And, improving our brain health really starts with food. That's where it starts with. As you know, food is our medicine. And
right.
So starting with food is the easiest and sometimes the least expensive, right?
Right.
So, first of all, when we want to eat whole food, right? We want to eat real food. We don't want to eat fake food. We don't want to eat packaged food. We want to eat real food. And what that looks like is, number one, most people can guess that it's eating the colorful fruits and vegetables, right? The rainbow foods. We start with that. The colorful fruits and vegetables, have your plate look like a rainbow. Those foods are higher in nutrients. They're higher in antioxidants. And good, healthy food is our food medicine, is our brain medicine, right? And of course, you're looking at and examples, and I've got a bunch of them written down here. These foods, the fruits and vegetables, you're looking at the highest antioxidant fruits and vegetables are such things as berries, blueberries, blackberries, cranberries, cherries, strawberries. We're looking at the leafy greens, kale, spinach, Brussels sprouts, broccoli. We're looking at avocados, which have good healthy fats. We're looking at red bell peppers, cherries, and kiwis. And all of those are high in vitamins and minerals and high in antioxidants and nutrients.
So it's funny because I have people that are like, well, why don't you teach us how to read a food label? And I said, well, most of the food that we should be eating doesn't have a label on it. It might just say apple, and then I got to thinking, and I'm like, maybe if somebody actually put a nutrition label on an apple, that people would want to buy it because they want to learn how to read a nutrition label, and I'm like,
That's funny. That's a good point.
Yeah. Well, we're conditioned to, well, what's on the label? And I'm like, well, an apple would just have an apple on the label. Like one serving apple.
That's funny. That's true. So, we want to eat foods that are the closest to nature, right? We can pick the apple off the tree, and it's much, eat the nut out of the shell. But if you go to a package, then it has that label.
Right.
Put on the apple, we could say high in vitamin C, fiber. And
right. Exactly. You could. They might sell more. They might sell more. All right. What else you got?
Okay, so that's one of the first step is I recommend is eating the colorful fruits and vegetables. Also, we want to balance our protein, fats, and carbohydrates at each meal. And people are different, and some people need more protein and less carbohydrates, and vice versa. But we want to balance that on each plate or each meal that we eat. And so we're looking at lean protein. We're looking at eggs, legumes, nuts is a good protein source. Healthy protein, of course, grass-fed meats, those that are hormone-free, that are without all of the antibiotics and hormones that are injected. So we want to be careful about the kind of meat that we eat. We want to look at good carbohydrates, healthy carbohydrates, and watch I'm going to be getting this more, but make sure we're eating the healthy carbohydrates and healthy fats. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. And what that looks like would be healthy carbs, right? We want to focus on the healthy carbs, stay away from the white starchy grains, right? And those white pastry and pasta and breads and things like that. And we want to go with the whole grains more so. We want to go with focus on whole food vegetables. Vegetables and fruits are carbohydrates, mm-hmm. right? They're carbohydrates. They're called a good carbohydrate. But we also know that grains in general raise the blood sugar, and that's one of the things that damages the brain is to have high blood sugar. So if we're constantly feeding ourselves too much of these grains that are on the high glycemic index mm-hmm. level, then we're going to be actually damaging our brain.
Does that cause the same type of inflammatory response as like refined sugars would?
Now, it's a little bit slower. Sugar goes straight to it and it's just, woo, off the charts. And so, but even whole grains will cause some kind of an inflammatory response. So that's why I recommend that we eat those, even the whole grains, whole grain rice and quinoa, although quinoa is not really a grain, but whole grain foods, are good for us, and they give us fiber and vitamins and minerals. But we should eat those in moderation and eat them with a good protein and healthy fat. So therefore, my point number 2 is eat fat, protein, and carbohydrates in balance. That way we're balancing out our blood sugar.
You had mentioned something about some people need a different ratio or different type of balance. How would you know?
Well, I have a little test that I do with my clients. It's called the metabolic typing test.
Oh.
And people can go and order that test if they want to. But what I do is I have like a little quiz, and people basically answer questions about themselves, and they sort of have a way. From this test, we have a way of labeling a person. So, for instance, I ask my clients, "What kind of an eater are you?" Now, we do talk about stress and are they bored and that kind of stuff. But I'm talking about, do they need more protein? Do they need more carbohydrates? Or what kind of a eater are they? And so I personally believe that that's one of the main reasons why there's so much conflict between vegetarians and meat eaters, is because people have different needs. We still need a balance. We still need all three. You can't say you have only protein and nothing else, or
right.
Nothing else. There has to be a balance. But that's my personal opinion from what I've learned and studied, is that the meat eaters, they need more protein, and so therefore they find that they can only get that in meat, whereas the vegetarian, not always, mind you, but the vegetarian seems to like to do more of the carbohydrates, so they have high rice and high beans and all these higher carbohydrate foods.
That's interesting.
That's just my philosophy,
No, I mean, that's a fascinating philosophy, and you should do a research study on that.
I should.
You should.
I should. I talk a lot about it with my clients. And I've done lots of studying on it already, but it's very fascinating, because if we're eating wrong according to our body type, then we can't handle that.
Well, I think that this kind of goes back to that idea that innately we know what we need, right?
I think so.
Yeah. So whether you're a vegetarian or not, innately, you know what your body needs if you're in touch with what you need, right? If you have an awareness about that. So I think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if a person says that they can't eat meat because they just don't like it, and they may find that they get more satisfaction out of more carbohydrate foods, more rice and beans, and there's studies from beans, and even vegetables contain protein.
Right.
So yeah, listening to your body and listening to what you like and dislike, there's nothing wrong with that. We should be doing that.
I just, and it'll probably air before this one, but did a whole segment with someone on intuitive eating. And so this kind of reminds me of that, intuitive eating, eat what you know you need. So yes. All right. So what's next on your list?
Okay. So we're looking at healthy carbs. We talked about that. Healthy carbs would be vegetables and whole grains, right? So we're looking at filling your plate with more vegetables than other things. And when I tell people the plate, so you think about your plate, it's round. So your plate should be half vegetables, half. I
got to work on that.
Yeah, half vegetables and fruit. But we want to be careful about the fruit, because we eat more high glycemic fruits than low glycemic fruits. And so therefore we're looking at our insulin. And I certainly believe in eating lots of fruit, and I do eat lots of fruit. But again, if we're looking at our brain health, and fruit damages and deteriorates our brain, we have to have a balance and everything. So we're looking at half vegetables, a fourth protein, whether that's meat or another protein source, and then a fourth starch. And that starch would be whole grain, a potato, whole grain rice, that sort of thing, sweet potato. Right. So that's what we're looking at for the healthy carbs. And also healthy fat. Okay, now I'd like to spend some time here, because we know the brain.
Please do. Yes.
We know that the brain is what, 60% fat?
Something like that.
Something
That's what
like
they say. Yeah.
60 to 70% fat. And so we need to feed it fat. So as we know now, we've heard now for a while that the fallacy that eat low fat is out.
Mm-hmm.
It's gone out. It's out of style. We don't.
Well, I talk about this all the time because I grew up in the 80s and that's when it all came out and everything became low fat and fat was taboo. And so for people my age and older, it's hard to come back to fat. Like it's a hard thing, Same thing with eggs. I mean, back in my day, they would say, don't eat eggs. They're bad for you. And now it's like, eat eggs. It's the best food ever,
It is. I remember back in the 80s, I remember making myself a big pile of pasta,
Yeah.
salt and pepper and very little butter and thinking I was healthy.
Yep.
So,
right.
Interesting. Just interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So healthy fats. And of course, when we say have fat, we're talking about the healthy fat. We want to stay away from the vegetable oils, the canola oils, the trans fats. Those are all trans fats that translate into our body it's because they're trans fats because they've been processed at very high temperatures, and our body can't handle that and it can't digest that. So therefore, we have issues with that, and it can cause our triglycerides and everything to be out of balance. But we're looking at healthy fat. We want healthy fats that contain omega-3s. We want monounsaturated fats that contain oleic acid and lauric acid. And you're looking at foods that are high in that would be fish, salmon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Avocados are good, healthy fat. In fact, I heard someone say, I think might be Dr. Hyman or maybe it was Dr. Axe. I forget one of those. A lot of people said, eat an avocado a day. Have you heard that?
No, but I love avocados. For a while, I was all about the avocado, and then I kind of got sick of them, and so I put them aside. And now I'm getting back into the avocado. Like for a while, I would buy so many. The problem is that they go bad so fast. Once they ripen, man, you got to eat them. But I like them in a smoothie. They make it nice and creamy.
Yeah, mm-hmm. They're good in a smoothie.
Better than a banana, I think. But
really?
yeah.
I love avocados. I'll just scrape them out and eat them.
Yeah.
But that's one of my weight loss tips that I tell my clients is that when you feel like you want a munchie and you're especially having a sugar craving and you just don't feel satisfied, go eat banana. I'm not a banana. Go eat an avocado, half an avocado. Really? And it just makes all the difference in the world for the people that, I talk to, and even for me,
Well, that makes a lot of sense because usually if you're super hungry like that, it means that you haven't gotten a whole lot of nutrients in your diet that day. And I tell people like that's stress on your brain enough. So you need to plump up your brain first. Yeah. So an avocado would do that really quick,
Yeah, it's high in fat, it's high in fiber. It also has some protein in there. So it's very satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
So healthy fats. Now we're looking also at the star for the brain health is of course coconut oil.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Coconut oil, MCT oil, that's the star besides the fish oil. So I'm sure you've heard the studies now about MCT oil and coconut oil reversing Alzheimer's and dementia in patients. Have you heard that?
I haven't, but that's interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And now Dr. Bredesen has done lots of research on this. I've been listening to a lot of stuff on this and really studying brain health for a while now. But MCT oil and coconut oil, there was, I don't want to get into the story, but a nurse or her husband had Alzheimer's, but she, out of a fluke, I can't remember the details, but out of the fluke started giving him coconut oil over his cereal in the morning. Mm-hmm. And he went back and he started having less deterioration and he was able to do more on the test. And so she finally realized it was the coconut oil, and then she switched to MCT oil once that came into popularity, and he completely reversed his Alzheimer's, which is amazing.
That is amazing. And I also think about the power of water with hydration on the elderly and Alzheimer's and things like that. Like some of these basic things that they don't get in their diet anymore can actually help reverse some of those disease states, or yeah. Mm-hmm. How many times has an elderly person that, has been dehydrated, they can look psychotic or they can just look lethargic or,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy.
And of course, hydration is important for all of us.
Right. Right. Exactly.
The elderly, if they're ill, they're not going to think to go get them a glass of water. I mean, I would think that it would be more difficult for them to get everything in.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Right.
So healthy fat, coconut oil is huge for the brain. In fact, if you need a brain lift, just go get you a little teaspoon of coconut oil and eat it just like that, or MCT oil is the best. And there's statistics for MCT oil stays in I think it gives you energy for, I think it's 3 hours, but it gives you more energy. So MCT is more concentrated. So it's a medium chain triglyceride. So it goes straight to the liver for digestion so that it skips all the other processes. So it doesn't go to our hips. We don't gain weight on coconut oil. You have to eat a lot of coconut oil in order to gain weight. So that's the wonderful thing about coconut oil. It's good for weight loss too, and MCT oil. But so if you have a teaspoon of MCT oil, you have high energy productivity for 3 hours afterwards. But if you have coconut oil, you have, I think it's 5 hours, but you don't have as much high productivity. So it's interesting, Anyway.
The problem I have is I've tried those oils just straight, and I just can't do it. So I would have to put it in something, I think.
Yeah, your smoothie. I put it in my smoothie every morning.
Yeah,
I love it just the way it is. So, but some people don't. They can't do the oil. So put it in something. I sprinkle it over my eggs in the morning.
Oh, there you go.
Little bag and I put it in salad dressing. Sprinkle it over my salads. So there's a lot of ways you can use it. Cook your foods in it. Use it in recipes. So yeah, coconut oil. Of course, olive oil is good. Avocado oil. All those oils are excellent to have for your brain health. It really feeds your brain. So healthy fat. And my next point was don't forget to drink plenty of water. So there's 85% of our body is water, as you know, 75 to 85%. And so we know that if the brain is dehydrated, that we can't think well, we aren't able to make decisions well. In fact, there's been all these brain studies on people who have had their brains looked at, before when they're dehydrated, and then they drink some water, and then I forget how long, and then they have their brains scanned again, and they're all plump. Before they're all wrinkled like a raisin, then they're all plump. So.
That's what I say, plump your brain. That's what I tell people. You got to plump up your brain. Yes. All right. Well, very cool. Do you have any final tips on food and brain health that you'd like to share?
Well, of course, the last thing I'd like to say is don't forget to just reduce, if not eliminate, the processed foods, processed, junked, packaged foods. It's not really real food. Anytime a food has been taken from its whole form and gone into a different form, like the cereals is made into a little square, it's a processed food, and it's not the original food anymore. So therefore, it has really no nutrients except what they add in, and not to mention all of the preservatives. And of course, staying away from foods that are high mercury is very damaging to the brain. Your heavy metals and things like that can get in there and can cause all kinds of issues. Yeah. And gluten too. Gluten too is huge for brain health. And even people who are non-celiac or think that they are intolerant, if they are intolerant or not intolerant, does that make sense? They think that gluten, even then, that can damage the brain.
I talk about it with people. Most people with mental health or addiction, I'm like, get rid of gluten. Like, try that. See if that helps you out a lot. The problem with that is, this is the pushback I get every time. And I'm gluten-free. I've been gluten-free. I'm the tail end of my 2nd year now. But the pushback I get is, oh, but all the gluten-free stuff is so expensive. And I'm like, we're back to apples. I'm like, we're back to whole foods, guys. Like right. It doesn't mean that you go buy all the gluten-free packaged food now, So it actually is not that difficult to be gluten-free if you're choosing more whole foods. Right. It makes things a lot easier. But that's the pushback I get every time.
Because of people's understanding, their understanding is it comes in a package. That's what we do. We
Right.
go in a package, we open it up, and we eat it.
Well, what am I going to do without my bread and noodles?
Yeah.
That's what they think, so it's interesting, but it's not that hard to be gluten-free, people. It's not that difficult.
And the advantages certainly outweigh the disadvantages of it. It's
Definitely.
amazing, just amazing.
Definitely.
Your memory and your joints and your digestion and your brain, everything just works so much better.
Right.
Dog.
Yes. So did I get this right? Did you have a free download that you wanted to share with people?
Yes, I do. I have my ebook, my beautiful ebook that I wrote. It's called 10 Foods That Changed My Life.
Nice.
And a lot of the foods we talked about are go into more detail that we talked about today are on there. Go into more detail about them and why they're so wonderful and healthy.
All right. So just so everybody knows that free download will be available in the podcast show notes. So you can snag your copy there. So, all right. Do you have anything else, or do you think we're good to go?
Well, I would say people don't think about taking care of their brain. They think about losing weight. They think about the heart. They think about their joints. They don't think about their brain, and so we go out there and we consume foods and we do things to our brain that because we don't see our brain, we don't think to take care of it. And so I think we need to be more intentional, because if our brain doesn't work, the rest of our body doesn't work.
I think we're soul sisters, because I'm like, without your brain, you would not be here, people. Like, you can get a lung transplant. You can have one lung. You can have one kidney. You can do all these. But if you don't have your brain health, you have nothing, And so I agree with you 150,000%.
I have a lot of thoughts about criminals and their food, and their brains. And you won't believe the studying I've done on this about the brain and everything, but about how, I think a lot of it is because that, they're on some kind of illicit drug, or they're on some kind of medication, or they have been deprived of nutritious whole foods maybe most of their life.
Well, and dehydrated and
sleep deprived, stress, you name it.
All the things that you talked about in your dress, only the opposite is what they're doing. Yeah.
So therefore, no wonder something clicks and they go out and do, murder somebody, or the things that happens out there.
Well, and I've shared this before, but I don't know if you know that I used to work in the prison as a therapist for a while. And I ran across a study on omega-3s and aggression. And the study showed that the inmates who were given omega-3s had lower rates of aggression and ended up in the hole less, so they ended up in segregation less. And I'll never forget, because I was like bringing it up, like, oh, look at this study. We need to give all these inmates omega-3s. And it was like I had a third eye here. They're like, no.
I know. It's
right? I know. And I was like, wow. And I remember the guys that I would work with, to get extra protein, they would order peanut butter off of Canteen. And I know that peanut butter isn't the best, but it's like the only thing, so they could get extra protein, And I'm like, wow. But they legit order a bunch of crazy crap off of Canteen, chips and sodas and all of that stuff. So there's, it's the whole inmate population is a fascinating thing. We could do so much better,
Yes, I read recently, I don't know how long ago the study was, or how they did a study with vegetarianism and inmates. And so they gave them the option. You could either eat vegetarian for a month, or you can eat regular food. So there's a handful of people, they chose vegetarian, but they had lots and lots of vegetables. That was the key. So even though they weren't eating meat, they were eating lots and lots of vegetables. And so a month later, before they were in there like this, right? A month later, they were smiling. Their face was glowing. They were calmer. There was less reports of fights, and they had good behavior. And they talked, and they lost weight, and they talked about how much better they felt and their clear thinking. It was amazing.
Yeah.
to think about the things we could even do to the people that, are in prison, and just helping them be healthy and get out to be into our society, to be people that can live a normal life.
Right. Because I tell everybody all the time. Well, I tell everybody all the time, they could be your neighbor, so we might as well teach them how to eat, So, all right. Well, it's been a real pleasure talking with you. And again, you're my soul sister, because brain health is so important. And I pound it all the time, brain, 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 brain. So thank you so much for sharing your insights on food, nutrition, and improving brain health. It was a nice conversation. I appreciate you being here. So
thanks for having me, Dr. Teralyn.
You bet. And so all of Veronica's information will be in the show notes. So everybody, thank you for joining us, and have a good evening.